This week's edition of Bowling Evolved is brought to you by BowlingIllustrated.com and TVSRadioNetwork.com. TVS Network, for over 50 years, bringing you the best in sports broadcasting. Hello, bowling fans. This is Dustin J. Markowitz coming to you taped, as always, from the gem along the Colorado River, Fort Mojave, Arizona, on location here in Elite Pro Shop to bring you yet another rendition of your favorite bowling talk show, Bowling Evolved. Joining me, as always, is my partner in crime. He's a 5-time PBA national champion, a millionaire on the PBA Tour, and the man with the golden left hand, the one and only Eric Forkel. Eric, how you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm great. How are we?
Living the dream one day at a time.
I bet.
Well, it's either the American dream or the American nightmare, so we got to go with one or the other. I figured to go with the dream, you know?
Let's pick the dream. The nightmare ain't so good.
Absolutely not. But, ladies and gentlemen, we want to welcome you once again to another fantastic Bowling Evolved program. This one, a little bit of a recap and kind of touching base on something we talked about on our last couple of shows, which was the one and only Eric Forkel having a chance to go back out onto the regular PBA Tour at 56 years old, bowling two of the tournaments here at the Fall Classic up in Las Vegas. And Eric, let's start right now. I mean, looking at the opportunity you had and going out there, what was it like kind of stepping back onto the lanes again, seeing all the young kids and trying to compete with all the new talent that's out on tour?
Well, it was quite interesting. I mean, the funny thing is I was in the locker room getting my stuff, and Norm Duke came up to me and said, darn, at least I'm not the oldest guy here. I thought that was interesting coming from Norm. I think I'm about a year older than him, and we had a nice little conversation talking about a few things. But, I mean, you know, it was interesting. Things have definitely changed. And the equipment and your ball guesses, I guess you can call them, and your strategy needs to be very, very good because obviously you have to strike a lot on that particular. It was the PBA Tour version of Cheetah, which is a little bit different than the old Cheetah that I used to bowl on. Definitely a lot slicker in certain areas. It's changed dramatically. Obviously the high rev players are dominant. For the most part on the regular tour, just like we had talked about. And it comes true, you know, guys with more speed, more revs just seem to open up the carry is better. So yeah, it pretty much panned out the way I thought. I thought if I did everything exceptionally well, I might be able to grab a check. I mean, that was my goal, was to get a check. And, I did fall short of that, but, I kind of ended up in the middle of the field. I think they had 120 bowlers, and I was like 60, 70 or something like that. So that was the first event I bowled. And again, ball choices along the way, I think might have made a difference into cashing and not cashing. And since obviously I don't do that for a living anymore, not knowing exactly where to go, when to do it, probably hurt me. But that being said, we came back and bowled the team part of the tournament. And, you know, the team thing, we bowled 6 games of qualifying individually, and we put our scores together with our fellow teammates. And then we came back that afternoon and bowled a Baker situation. And the pattern was different. It was a little longer, 43 feet. And I had a much better look. There was 100 bowlers overall in the team event. And after the first 6 games, I had the 12th highest score. So, if it was a singles tournament after 6 games, I would have made the finals. I would have made the top 16. So
Mhm.
I actually averaged pretty close to 240 the first 6 games. And after that, we bowled Baker. I bowled the 5th frame, and then I bowled the 10th frame. And I once again, I bowled well. At one point, I did have 20 in a row. I did strike for like 5 straight games. So needless to say, I was throwing the ball well, and I had a great look with the ball I was using. The absolute nirvana was terrific, and it matched up perfectly on that pattern. And I struck quite a bit against those guys. So again, even at 56, if you match up properly, I averaged almost 240 the first 6 games, and again, only 11 people beat me out of 100. So that tells me I would have definitely cashed and or made the finals if it was a singles event. But it wasn't, and unfortunately the rest of my team struggled, and we ended up like 17th or 18th out of 20 teams. So unfortunately we were nowhere close, but I had a good look. I threw the ball well. I struck a lot. Kind of the opposite of the day before, where I thought I threw the ball pretty good. I just didn't match up enough over the course of 16 games to keep up. So again, it's a bit of a crapshoot when you go out and bowl a few as opposed to bowling them all the time. And the first one that was kind of a little disappointing. The second one was, even though the final outcome was about the same financially, I performed much better in the team event, and from a single standpoint, I definitely competed against them.
I was going to ask too. I mean, now going back out there and seeing the talent that is out on tour, and obviously you shot fairly well the second tournament. Not bad, obviously, in the first tournament either. But do you feel that if you were out there bowling full time, that you still could make some checks out there?
I like to say if I was competing quite often as much, absolutely. I think I can definitely get some checks. It used to be back in the day, you would have your stretches where things would go well for so many weeks, and then you might hit a dry spell, but then even at this age, I think in today's environment, when the right situation comes along, like it did in the team portion on that pattern, I struck quite a bit, which again, nothing for nothing, out of 100 bowlers, if I'm 12th after 6 games, that tells me something, and that's just numbers. So yeah, you can still strike a lot with the right ball, with the right angle, doing the right concept, but unfortunately, if you don't, then that you get run over, because the talent level is very, very good. But there still is some things out, the environment has changed in that regard, but it's still about making decent shots. It's just the ones who can seem to create a little more area seem to do better. But even back in the day, it was like that, but it seems to be even a little more prevalent now. That's for sure.
Well, all I know is I was rooting on the old guy out there. I just want to let you know that you had my full support while you were bowling, having a chance to watch that on Extra Frame. And I do want to also give a big shout-out to the PBA. I thought it was fantastic that they allowed some free showings of Extra Frame to anyone that was not a subscriber. I've been able to have a subscription on them for quite a while, but I think that was a really good move on their behalf, and I think you got a chance to showcase a lot of fantastic bowling. The best bowlers in the world were at that tournament, and Eric, I think all in all, even though you did not take the check home that you wanted, I think you did very well out there. I can say on behalf of Bowling Evolved and all of our fans, I think we're very proud of what you were able to accomplish.
Well, I appreciate that, and like I said, you have to take it into perspective. It is obviously not my job anymore. That's a good 10 years ago, and I have to look at it in just a certain way, and whether you're older or not, you still got to fight the elements of the high rev players and what's conducive and what's not. But again, I proved to myself in the second event that I bowled that even being not a high rev player, I can still strike enough, especially over those 5 games where I threw 20 in a row. That was kind of cool, and that's what I have to take from it. It was just to move on into whatever else I do, and just keep playing within my little thing. And the senior tour obviously is a much better environment. My chances of earning checks and making finals are far, far, far greater because it's a better environment, obviously. But we'll see next year. If it comes back here again, we may take another shot at it. We'll see.
It'd be great to see. And all I know is right now I'm calling it when the over-under doubles come back to Vegas and I'm bowling healthy again. You'll be the first team. You'll be the stroking left-hander, and I'll be the two-handed right-hander, and we'll have to win that tournament when it comes back into our backyard.
There you go. There you go.
All over that right now. But with that being said, let's look a little bit ahead here right now going on. It is November 6th. Can't believe it's already November, 14 days short of our big tournament coming up on the 20th.
Yes.
Yes, so very, very exciting. Entries are still coming in. Definitely want to give a big shout out to all of our sponsors: Mongoose Bowling Products, RealBowlersTape.com, Finley Motor Company, the Desert Bowler, Elite Pro Shop, AZ. I mean, it's so wonderful, all the things that have come in. Of course, Eric's favorite bowling center, Riverside Lanes in Laughlin, Nevada. I think he loves that place. And of course,
I love that place. I love that place. My favorite place. Love it.
And of course also Motive Bowling. You can check out all their equipment at motivebowling.com. And I have to say, Eric, the outcry from the community has been fantastic, and I think a lot of it has really generated some buzz in the community, not just from our tournament, but a lot of the events that are going on right now. Most notably, we've been watching the U.S. Open, and there's a lot of different coverage coming on. I mentioned the extra frame coverage really sort of bringing bowlers back into what social media and what digital online streaming services can really do for bowling. And Eric, from your perspective right now, I mean, it seems like finally at least the PBA and USBC might be trying to embrace a little more, whereas it hasn't really been catching on with the fans as much as it would. But now, after seeing that tournament, it looks like we're starting to get some quote-unquote old, if not new fans coming back into bowling.
Yeah, it appears that way. I mean, it's nice in a lot of ways, especially to have a great venue to bowl in over there at the Plaza at South Point. That is a terrific venue for tournaments. It's just, obviously it was built for tournaments. So it's just a great setup there to really, get the tournament feel. It's just a shame that things they just don't have the same feel as they used to, meaning it's that, tournament, traveling tour that it used to be. It's just different. I see a lot of some of the old faces, that's for sure. And obviously tons of the new faces, the young kids, of course. But it's definitely not what it used to be in that regard. And being on, both, I mean, I was talking to Parker, and Parker didn't even bowl this week. He went up to somewhere up in Washington to do some work for Brunswick and then bowl a regional. Now, he skipped the U.S. Open to go bowl a regional. I mean, back in the day, that was unheard of. You would never skip a major to go bowl a regional, but that's what he did because didn't care for what he saw on the graph. Number one, didn't think it was going to be very fair, and he just didn't like his odds or chances. So he went up to Oregon or Washington to bowl a regional, and I saw after the first day of qualifying, of course, he was the leader, and I would bet almost anything he won today. I don't know for a fact, but I'd have to bet he did because he was, his odds are terrific. But, when you have great Hall of Fame players like that not wanting to participate, it does make you wonder. Back in the day, that just never happened.
Yeah. Although I will say, at least from my perspective, I think USBC, what they were trying to do at the U.S. Open, whether or not they succeeded is one thing, but the fact that they were trying to even up a little bit on both sides, obviously the left side was a little bit different from the right side on the charts. Eric, I think you had a chance to look at the lane pattern as well, if I'm not mistaken. So
I did. It's very strange looking, very bizarre.
Yeah, and it definitely is different than a lot of things that I have seen. However, the concept behind it, I understand. Although the one bit of controversy that I found very interesting is that they are bowling on one fresh oil squad a day, a burn, and then a double burn, as opposed to getting fresh oil after the burn squad. And Eric, you and I were talking a little bit about this off air, and you had made a comment that you just didn't think that the oil was able to hold up with double squads like this.
No, I mean, if you look at some of the clips, they show people lofting the ball over the gutter cap a good 25, 30 feet onto the lane. You see the ball crashing onto the lane. My God, I'm sure Mike Moniak loves seeing those balls crash on the lane in his brand new facility. That is just not, and what guys do is they don't go down to plastic or urethane, at least on the right they don't. You just don't see that. they just keep moving in, and they start launching the gutter cap. And I mean, that's just craziness, but I get it because of today's bowling balls and the patterns. After so many 200 bowlers, they're going to burn those lanes up. I just don't see how you cannot oil after every squad. I know they're trying to make it tough and challenging, but with today's equipment, how do you not oil in between just because of how strong the balls are? And, people can take these balls and hit them with 220. I mean, they could, just chew that lane right up, and then you got a bowl on them all day long. I mean, back in the old days, sure, they hooked at night, but not like what I see nowadays. This has been going on for a while, but now it's just when it happens, it's crazy because these balls just rip the oil off the front of the lane. It's just, I don't know. I mean, I understand to try to make it fair with bowling. Everyone gets to bowl on the burn, but, if guys are throwing the ball over the gutter caps and launching the ball out on the lane on the right, where can and where do any lefties play to actually score a little bit? How's that possible? So there's a few lefties I saw bowling well, and I'm going to guess they caught things the right way, and maybe their cross was this or that. I mean, there's just so much element there. It's just not. I mean, I understand why Parker skipped it. I get it. It's just a strange thing to watch. I just don't get it, but that's their thing. That's what they believe in, and you cannot say nothing because that's their concept.
Very true. However, you bring up a really interesting point about the right-handers not switching to plastic and urethane, and I think that's a good place to take our first break. When we come back, Eric and I are going to talk a little about the different equipment in tournament atmosphere and how you can change your game to help suit the oil condition as it breaks down. Stick around. This week's edition of Bowling Evolved is brought to you by BowlingIllustrated.com and TVSRadioNetwork.com. TVS Network, for over 50 years, bringing you the best in sports broadcasting. Welcome back, bowling fans. As we were going into our break, Eric, we were talking about, very interestingly, the equipment and how a lot of the bowlers continue to use the reactive urethane even as the lanes break down. However, there are definitely bowlers out there that have seemed to, quote-unquote, shun some of the reactive equipment in favor of going back to urethane balls. Some that keep in mind are like Jesper out there, and even in the last tournament that we were watching, Michael Haugen, when he went out there, he was using a mix shot 300 in match play, and Mike is by no means a super high rip player. He can turn the ball, but he's definitely has more of a straight game for his advantage. And Eric, from your perspective, why do you think more bowlers continue to try to force the reactive equipment, or do you think that the influx of regular urethane balls on the market are going to start making bowlers make that adjustment to not kill themselves in later squads?
Well, there's definitely it's become more prevalent in the last so many years. Better tournament players are throwing more urethane in general. But still, I shouldn't say it's a small majority. You see it a little more often on the left. Guys like Jacob Buderov and Jasper, the high rev players on the left who, rev the heck out of the ball, and their angles have to be a little straighter. Urethane has a slower response. It's just a slower motion across the lane, and going from pair to pair, you can read it a lot easier than you can, say, reactive resin. It's on the right, I see some guys do it, but nowhere near. The right's a completely different animal. It's hard to play straighter angles. Haugen's very good at playing straight. He's not very deadly at hooking the ball. He's not gonna beat most of the guys out there hooking or swinging the lane. He's gonna beat them when he can play his straight game because that's what he's very good at. Kind of like Norm Duke these days. That's when he's going to excel, even though Norm can do everything. But the point is, you do see the urethane being used a little more on the left than the right by certain players. But I think it's made a bit of a comeback because guys like to get control of the mid lane, and urethane can definitely do that. And especially if you have a lot of hand, it's like terrific. I mean, it works great. There's no doubt about it. And they're so good. They make the ball so good nowadays. Even the urethane balls they make very, very good. It's not like you're throwing a ball from 30 years ago trying to compete. It's modern urethane technology. And certain companies even have balls that are even a little bit, they roll better than urethane, like, for instance, the Brunswick BTU. BTU stands for better than urethane, not better than you. It rolls similar to urethane, and it hits a little bit better because it's made out of urethane. I mean, it's made out of resin, but it rolls kind of like urethane. It's got that shape of urethane. So that's why they call it better than urethane. They're not calling it urethane because it really isn't. It's a different form of resin. So again, that ball definitely has its play. Matter of fact, in that first tournament I bowled, I should have used it more. I didn't give it a good enough chance. I just didn't trust myself, and it probably would have been beneficial. Stay away from the bad games on the pairs that were just really strange. And that's the trend. And I think if you're a tournament player nowadays, you should have some type of urethane-like ball in your arsenal. All the companies have. Hammer's got a terrific one. All the companies got them. And I think you should definitely keep that in your arsenal if you're a tournament-type player. If you bowl on house shots all the time and you bowl in league, maybe not so much. But if you're any type of tournament player, absolutely. I think it's a must. If you're building an arsenal, you should have at least one urethane type ball in your arsenal.
Yeah, it's interesting from my perspective, going from one-handed to two-handed. When I was one-handed, I was about 17.5 miles per hour, 17 to 17.5, and I was pretty much a straight down in player. You had a chance to watch my game a bit there, Eric. I was, I would say a fairly traditional player as far as my game went, but now going to two-handed, my speed dropped down. I'm only about 15.5 now. I lost some speed down the lane, but my revolutions jumped up, accordingly, which as most would figure from going one-handed to two-handed. And the irony is, for me, in my bag right now, I have the Motive Tank, which is a pure urethane ball. I have the BTU, which is the blend, which is a step up, and then I also have a polyester ball for 10 pins. And interestingly enough, I really don't throw much reactive urethane on house shots, simply because with the lower speed, I can't control the amount of friction that generates with that ball. I'm going left and chopping off 7 pins by the time I get through the first game. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic to see that. But as you said, I think one of the best things that I can say about the new urethane balls is that the weight blocks are very well designed for the urethane. And even though they don't build up as much friction as, say, a reactive urethane ball, they still don't sacrifice hitting power. And I think that's one thing, especially I see a lot of seniors that are throwing, for example, like the Blue Hammer or the BTU or the Rebel Tank, that they've actually gone to the urethane because as they've gotten older, they've lost the speed, or as we talked about, they kind of aged themselves out of the traditional game. But now with the urethane balls, they're able to get the ball down the lane further, and unlike throwing a polyester ball, they're actually having hitting power on the back end, whereas, if you were using nothing but plastic, that was unheard of.
Yeah, again, like I said, the urethane balls, they have a slower response to friction, whereas resin balls, they have a much higher response. Higher response means, in other words, when they touch friction, they're going to grab faster. Balls that have a slower response to friction, there's more control. Maybe you don't need to throw it quite as hard. You can play a little straighter angles. That's why to me, it's so important to have those in your bag. And heck, that's what you use most of the time because it matches your lower speed with a higher rev. You can't throw any of the monster hooking balls. They're either going to hook off the lane or they're going to burn up at 30 feet and go straight. So that's most of the guys who are two-handed or throw it with a lot of revs, they throw it very fast. They have a lot of speed. We're talking 18 to 20 miles an hour or even harder to get the ball down the lane. And when you watch some of these guys at the Open on C-Squad lofting the ball over the gutter cap 30 feet out onto the lane, the ball crashing on the lane just to get it to skid, it's like, wow, what is that? It's just craziness. But, they used to throw the ball over the gutter caps 15, 20 years ago, and now it's just gotten worse because the balls have gotten stronger. They haven't gotten weaker. And that's when back then they started oiling throughout the day. But for some reason, the Open, they feel the best way to keep it fair is to have a fresh, a burn, and a double burn, and that's fine. That's whatever that's on the USBC, whatever they want to do. It's just back in the day they used to do the U.S. Open used to be basically 1-to-1, 40 feet flat. That's changed about a year ago from what I was reading. So now they use a little bit of shape to the pattern and what have you, and at times you're going to see some higher scores, but and by the time you go through 3 different squads with 3 different situations, the scores are going to be fairly medium, but still higher than what they were when they were going like 1-to-1, 40 feet a few years back. I don't see that anymore. It's definitely not the pattern anymore. So.
Well, and I think some people would make the argument too that the flatter patterns tend to actually I shouldn't say that because I think back. I was going to say the flatter patterns tend to benefit the two-handed players or the higher rev players, but I'm actually thinking back to my interview with Butch Soper, who said that he actually preferred the flatter patterns because then he could play straight up and rocket to the pocket, and he was able to use that accuracy to his advantage. It's kind of interesting. I wonder how some of these. Well, we've seen them. Guys like Belmonte obviously play very well in the flatter patterns, but then again, so does guys like Norm Duke. So it's interesting. There's a unique dynamic there, and Eric, I know you and I have talked about it numerous times, but unfortunately, I just don't know if there is a right answer on what is going to equalize the playing field.
No, because I don't think you can, unless you've got a field of 200 bowlers, and let's say you've got 100 lefties and 100 right-handers, and you all bowl at the same time. That would be the only way it could be equal, meaning left or right. But then you still got the different types of styles on both sides. There's no such thing as fair or making it equal. It never has been. The game really never has been fair and equal. At times, scoring paces have been in the middle. A lot of times, the scoring paces are through the ceiling. A lot of times, there's no lefties. A lot of times, there's tons of lefties. So looking for fair and equal, it's just not going to happen. The game is not fair and equal. The game will never be fair and equal because you're playing on a surface that has a lubricant on it, and you don't have the exact ratio on both sides. Until you find that exact ratio, in my opinion, it'll never be that way. It can't. Because, if you've got 100-man people bowling and you got 80 right-handers and say 10 or 15 lefties or 20, let's say, well, of course the right side's going to break down faster than the left, and the left's going to stay smoother. So now you put an offset pattern in there to try to adjust it, and then that pattern never develops on the left, and next thing you know, a lefty never scores. So now it's been this way forever, and it's never going to change. So to make it fair and even, it's just not happening. It's a pipe dream. It's a dream because of the environment, because you put oil on a lane, and they do their best. And that's all they can. Everyone has their own concept, their own idea. They used to have lane committees back in the day. Then they had just one person, and they have this idea. The USBC has their idea. This guy has that idea. It's just opinions and ideas of what they think is fair. I mean, it's just an opinion, like everyone has. And there's never an answer to this thing. There won't be. And with the high rev players, the two-handers, are creating so much torque and disturbing the lane surface with the way they throw the ball, and then put that on top of the equipment, and it's just craziness. It is absolutely crazy. It really is.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to try to prepare yourself you've got to have a ball rep in your pocket, so to speak, and you've got to have somebody going and basically charting the pairs for you to give you a good chance, and you need a lot of eyes behind you. You need a lot of help. It's kind of hard to do it all on your own these days on just talent and shot making alone. It's very difficult.
There's no doubt about it. I was going to say, what's also interesting, you're talking about the different lane patterns. I think it's so interesting, some of the different companies and individuals that are trying to do just that, trying to find what is the fairest, quote unquote, of the bunch. I was actually really fascinated with Richie Sposado's from lane one. I don't know if you had a chance to look at his A game, B game, C game lane patterns. Have you had a chance to look at those at all?
No.
Yeah. He came up with an idea, basically working sort of what USBC was trying to do with the red, white, and blue patterns, where A game would play a certain way, B game, et cetera, et cetera. And as I've said before on the show, I thought the red, white, and blue patterns were a tremendous idea, and I wish that more bowling centers would have had the opportunity to adopt it. But, it goes without saying, bowling centers want to see higher scores for the most part. You and I both know this. A bowler that's averaging 230 when he's actually a 190 means he's generally speaking a happier bowler. They want to get their honor score. They want to come back. And when you make the lanes hard, and just like when they go to nationals and they grind out $150 and then don't strike all for 9 straight games, they're not a happy bowler anymore.
No, and I know we talked about this before. You cannot take away the candy. They've given the candy out now for the last 20, 30 years. You can't take it away. The game participation in league especially is dwindling down to not very much these days. I mean, it's going the other way. It's been going the other way for years. And now you're going to make the lanes more challenging. So for the people who bowl once a week, they can't average 220 or 230, then they're going to give it up or they're going to go somewhere else where they can. So it's not a good situation. It's not a positive environment. I know people try to find positives, but in that, talking about lane conditions, I mean, for the most part, those are what you would call recreational conditions. That's what those are. That's what leagues are. That's what house shots are. And, something like over there at the USBC at the Open, that's not a recreational. That's more of a sport challenging situation. And it is, no doubt, but when you do the right thing, you can go out there and average 220, 230. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I've seen guys do it this week. And the talent is terrific, and they're going to do it. But, again, there's just so many variables, and there's just so many things going on in today's environment. And the talent is very good, but like we had said before, the talent was really good 25, 30 years ago. The talent was good. Talent's always good. It's just different. It's just in a different environment now. So I don't know if the guys nowadays are more talented or they're just differently talented. Skills are skills. I mean, guys had skills back in the 80s and 90s, and even in the 70s, it's just a different time. But people get all excited when they watch people, revving the ball up with two hands, let's say throwing at 22 miles an hour, blasting pin. It's a different type of game. But I don't know if it's a better game. I don't know if it's a better environment. It's definitely not a very good financial way to make a living anymore. That's for darn sure. There's just no denying that. So that part has failed dramatically. All the rest, that's yet to be seen.
I think you're wrong, though. I think those guys back in the 50s and 60s, the Dick Webbers, the Billy Hardwicks, they were all hacks. Nothing but lucky players, The Glenn Allisons, the Billy Whaleys, they were nothing back.
Just like I said, they were all, every era has had star bowlers, and it is what it is, and this is what it is now. And unfortunately, if you don't have a lot of money behind it and it's not where people can go make a living at it, how do you make it grow? How does it keep going? Besides just the love and the passion for it, but to try to push people to get into it for a career, it was tough 20 years ago. It's almost impossible now to push people in that direction. But then again, I saw a lot of young kids out there bowling, trying to make a name and trying to, bowl professionally. And I'm talking young. A lot of them they go to college or they've left college, so maybe they've got their degrees and what have you. But it's definitely a younger crowd. There's no doubt. But I just don't know. I just looking at it, I don't see a great future. Hopefully, I'm wrong. I've been wrong before, and hopefully, I'm wrong with this. But all the data seems to point for not a very good future when it comes to being a professional bowler.
Well, our hope is that, the continued passion and drive of younger bowlers will start to become more prevalent. And, Eric, I think with people such as yourself and myself that are pushing bowling on our own agendas, trying to do something just out of the passion of our hearts, because, this is not a money-making endeavor for us. We do it because we love the sport. Hopefully there's a lot more people like that, and that's what will keep the sport going and hopefully growing at some point.
Well, hopefully, and that's why we're going to run our event in a few weeks. And, for what you put up and what you can win, it's actually not too bad considering, there's definitely, for a weekend, you can walk out of there with a couple thousand. It's not too shabby.
Not at all, and that is a good chance to plug that tournament because Lord knows we have never done any shameless self-promoting on this show.
Never.
Ladies and gentlemen, coming up on November 19th and 20th, we will have the 2x4 tournament, the main event on the 20th, the 5-game sweeper on the 19th, $2,000 guaranteed first place. Again, we had mentioned our sponsors earlier, including Moto Bowling, Mongoose Bowling Products, RollBowlersTape.com, Elite Pro Shop, Tinley Motors AZ, and the Desert Bowler, and of course Riverside Lanes, the place that Eric loves.
Love that place. Love it. Love it.
Remember, you can go to our Facebook page, bowlingevolved.com, click on our events. You can see the entry form for the tournament. There are still spots available. We have a lot of interest. We will have TV coverage by the wonderful TBS television network, and we will have the lovely Paula Vidal doing our lane side interviews, Eric and I doing commentary for the show. And I think this is just going to be one heck of an event. Again, if you have any questions, please check out the entry form and sign up as soon as possible. And while we do have a second here, I also want to give a quick plug out to, here's an interesting one for you, Eric. A Let's Player, video game player, gave us a nice little plug on her channel, Miss_Murder. That's MISS_Murder, MURDA. She's a Twitch gamer, also happens to be a big bowling fan, gave us a big shout out on her show and on her information on the wall, so we want to give her a same plug. And I'll tell you what, Eric, if we can integrate ourselves into the video gaming circle, maybe we can get bowling growing again.
Wouldn't that be something? That'd be cool.
we need to make a guest appearance. We can, well, let's see, what was the last video game you played? Probably like, what, Pong or Pac-Man back in the 80s, something like that?
Yeah, you know what, you might be right. You actually could be right about that.
That's fine. I have to say, I grew up in bowling centers throughout the 90s and lived in arcades, so to me, though, looking at some of the modern games today, I'm totally perplexed. But then even stuff that I played, you would probably be totally perplexed. So we'll find a happy medium. We'll play some skee ball and pinball and make ourselves a Bowling Evolved gaming channel that doesn't have video games. They have traditional bar games. We'll have foosball. We'll have darts. It'll be a great time.
I used to like the bowling arcade game where you threw the shuffle thing and it went underneath the pins and the pins would go up, and it was the bowling game at the arcade, wherever it was, like the miniature golf place. They always had a bowling game there, something, and you would. You would slide it, and it would go underneath, and the pins would go up, and then it'd come back down. And that should have told me right there I was going to be a bowler back in the day, because that or the skee ball, I always gravitated toward those type of games, and whereas my other friends did all the other stuff, but. And there you have it. That's how you start your bowling career, by throwing
I have not seen one of those shuffle games in probably 20 years, Eric. I remember it from being little. I remember seeing them in the bars. I have not seen one in a long time.
Oh yeah, I remember them at the miniature golf places back in the day. But anyway, it's basically it it is what it is nowadays, and there's just always something to talk about, and everybody has an opinion on it, and that's what makes the world go around. And, we have our own opinions on this show, and I'm sure there's quite a few people who disagree and want to talk about all the good and great things about bowling, and that's fine too. And they're more than welcome to come on here, and we can discuss it, and they can explain to me how great things are and how good things are, and I'm just not seeing it. I'd love to have it.
Well, they are always welcome. And, again, I do want to give a big shout-out again to Miss Murder. That would be Jessica on the Twitch and YouTube channels for giving us a shout and promoting what we're doing. Bowling Evolved is always good to have some cross-promotion. And obviously some support from outside of your traditional channels in the bowling industry, which, as we've said many times, is what bowling needs. We need outside influence.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. But with that being said, that is going to take us into the end of our show. I want to say thank you very much to all of our listeners, all 7 or 8 of you, maybe 9, I don't know, it depends on how our ratings are in the TDS radio network. Again, a big shout-out to all of our sponsors, listeners, fans, and anyone else that just happens to find us. Thank you so much. We are going on 4.5 years of doing this show. I'm surprised Eric hasn't killed me or vice versa yet, but you know what? We still do it because we have the love of the game. We are the talk show by real bowlers for real bowlers on the gem along the Colorado River, Fort Mojave, Arizona. And Eric, I don't think I'd want to do this with anyone but you, my friend.
I appreciate that, ditto. And I just like listening to myself talk, I guess. I don't know. And instead of talking to myself, there might be 7 or 8 people out there who want to listen to me BS about what I think I know what I'm talking about. And we'll keep doing this until they tell us we can't.
And hopefully that doesn't come at any time in the near future. And I was going to say, I mean, hell, no one listens to me talk down here, and I'm sure the missus probably just sticks con in her ears up by you. So, it's a win-win for both of us.
Oh, yeah, I got to go hide in a little special room to do this because she don't want nothing to do with this. But that's okay. Like I said, we like to talk about it, and one of these days we'll have people on here talking to us about it as well, and we'll do a little live session. That'd be fun.
Yep. Look forward to doing that here in the near future. But again, that's going to take us into the end of our show. Once again, a big thank you to all of our listeners. And for my partners, PBA, I was going to say PBA. I'm trying to think of a good word for you, Eric. PBA.
Old guy.
Old guy.
I'm just the old guy.
This crumsion of the lanes, this old and decrepit bowler on the
just this old guy who likes to talk about the good old days. That's me.
From Old Man Forkle, I've been Dustin J. Markowitz. Have a great night.
Good night.